Hello and welcome to a new United podcast series, Men Behind the Stats. If you're new around here, please do drop a sub, be much appreciated, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at United Podcast, the same as the YouTube channel name. So welcome back, thank you for tuning in, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, the opinion for today's video is that Donny van de Beek will improve Manchester United. There's a lot of rumours flying around that United are in for Van de Beek, and for once it looks like there is something to the rumours. There's a lot of reliable sources putting their name to it, so it looks like there's something to it. So we'll start off with a quick profile. Who is Donny van de Beek? So for those of you who don't know, he's a 23-year-old versatile Dutch midfielder. He can play in lots of different positions. He can play a central midfielder, he can play as an attacking midfielder, he can play as a defensive midfielder, and he's really, really intelligent, so he's able to adapt to all of those fairly easily. He's currently at Ajax. He was a key part of their Champions League run in 18-19 season. Unlike De Jong and Matthijs de Ligt, he didn't get the big move. There's been talk of a lot of interest in him, but he hasn't moved as yet, which is why Manchester United are now linked with him. Now we know who Van de Beek is, we'll have a look at his game and see whether he can improve Manchester United. So we're going to have a look at firstly his defensive game and then his offensive game, and then finally we'll have a look at his other qualities as a player. So to start to analyse his defensive game, I've got this chart here. It looks at the possession adjusted defensive behaviour. All stats are per 90 minutes. So going up the chart, we've got the defensive actions per 90 minutes. So that includes tackles, clearances, blocks, interceptions. And along the bottom, we've got the number of times they're dribble past per 90. So the best place to be on this graph is as far left as possible and as far up as possible. So the closer they are to the left and the higher they are on the graph, the better their defensive abilities are. Now clearly with defensive stats, unlike attacking stats where raw numbers are best, defensive stats are heavily influenced by how much your team has the ball. So obviously with Ajax expected to dominate possession in pretty much every game in the Eredivisie, they will have more possession of the ball than the likes of Manchester United will. So I've adjusted these defensive metrics for possession of the ball to give a more accurate indicator of what you can expect from each player if they were playing in the same team. You'll also notice on this graph that I put Wilfred Ndidi on in blue, as he's a Leicester player, and he appears on the top right corner of this graph. The reason I've done that is because United have been linked with Ndidi, and he is my preferred choice at defensive midfielder, so I think it's useful to see how Van de Beek would stack up against Ndidi in terms of his defensive stats. The first thing to note about Van de Beek's defensive qualities from this chart is that he's very rarely dribble past. If you look at how far left he is, he's about the same as Pogba 18-19, but he's further left than pretty much everyone else. This could be really important for Manchester United because it means he's probably quite good at stopping counter-attacks. Given that in most games Manchester United are expected to dominate possession, the counter-attack is pretty much the only way the opposition can create a good chance, excluding set pieces. And at the moment, if you look at where Fred is on that graph and where Bruno is on that graph, the United midfielders aren't brilliant at stopping dribbles past them. So the fact that Van de Beek doesn't get dribble past very much could be a really, really useful weapon in terms of helping United to dominate games, sustain attacks, and create more and more pressure on the opposition. In terms of his all-round number of defensive contributions, that's going up the graph. His numbers are pretty similar to Pogba and Bruno, so that's pretty good. Nothing exceptional there, but that's a decent number to be at. The other thing to note from this graph is Wilfred Ndidi. Look how high up he is on that graph. He's getting through a monster amount of defensive work, a ridiculous shift in most games. So that shows that Ndidi would also be a massive asset to Manchester United were we to sign him for that defensive midfielder role. Now we come on to this next chart here, which shows the tackle success percentage. This is again from league games only. And the first thing to notice, Van de Beek, pretty good tackler, only exceeded by Pogba in 18-19 season. So if you combine the fact he's a good tackler with the fact he's rarely dribble past, that again gives more weight to the conclusion that he's going to be very, very useful in terms of stopping counter-attacks for United. The other thing to note from that graph is that a lot of the players on this graph, a lot of the Manchester United midfielders, very, very similar in terms of tackle success. There's not too much variation there. Having looked at Van de Beek's defensive game, we'll now move on to look at his offensive game and see whether he can improve United in that respect as well. So coming on to this chart, along the bottom we've got the passes into the penalty area per 90 minutes, which for me is a good measure of creativity, and going up that graph we've got expected goals and expected assists per 90 minutes. I've used the non-penalty versions of expected goals because it negates the impact of some players being penalty takers and some players not, and it gives a fairer comparison between players of their performance and contribution in open play. Using expected assists also negates the impact of having a bad finisher or a better finisher up front in your team. Because, to use the same example I used in the Rashford video, if you've got a winger who keeps getting balls into the penalty spot and the striker keeps missing the tap-ins, your assist value would be quite low, but your expected assist value wouldn't be impacted. So it's a good measure of how good the player's delivery and chance creation is. Their final ball, in other words. So looking at where Van der Beek is on this graph, you'll notice that his passes into the penalty area per 90 minutes is better than Fred and McTominay. So considering for a lot of the year Fred and McTominay have been our midfield, that will clearly be an improvement on them. However, Van der Beek is quite a way short of Pogba and Bruno Fernandes in this metric, and there is one important reason for that. We'll come back to it later, but because Van der Beek is so comfortable everywhere on the pitch, he's often finding himself a lot higher up the pitch, maybe sometimes running in behind, running past the last defender, trying to beat the offside trap and adding an extra body going forward. So if he's doing that, then he's not going to be able to make as many passes into the penalty area. So that is one reason why Van der Beek looks slightly lower on this metric. However, even with this in mind, I still think Van der Beek's position in this graph should urge some caution from United fans. He may struggle against deep defences in the same way that Fred and McTominay have, with being unable to penetrate the defence and get the ball into the penalty area. Now, if we look at the height of Van der Beek on this graph, he's comfortably above pretty much everybody. His closest challenger is Bruno Fernandes. So clearly, Van der Beek will add goals and assists from midfield. However, I do think this will come mainly from open games, rather than the tight games where United have been struggling in at the moment. In conclusion, for that attacking segment, he would still be an improvement on United's midfield in terms of his attacking qualities. Now we come on to his other qualities on the pitch. First of all, having come through the Ajax Academy, he's very, very comfortable in possession everywhere on the pitch. Now, I've got a particular memory from Ajax's Champions League run of Matthijs de Ligt getting the ball in the right-back position, running all the way down the line, getting to the byline and pulling a ball back to the penalty spot. Now, obviously that's de Ligt and not Van der Beek, but it's the sort of thing that the Ajax model, the Ajax way of developing players, teaches them and tries to bring to them, so that they're comfortable keeping the ball, creating something, keeping possession and making passes everywhere on the pitch. They don't get scared because they're out of position. And more than that, it really gives them a sense of game intelligence. The players coming through that academy know when to attack, they know when to defend. They're sensible in possession, they make the right decisions most of the time. It's really, really good game intelligence that the Ajax Academy impresses upon its players. Now, I briefly mentioned it earlier, but the final thing I want to draw attention to from Van der Beek's game is the fact that he's able to sometimes play on the offside line, almost as a second striker. Now, this is quite rare for a central midfielder, but it adds an extra body who's able to make good runs forward beyond the defence and stretch the defence. So sometimes, Martial likes to back off and doesn't always make runs in behind, whereas having Van der Beek there, he can do that as well to take a bit of pressure off Martial. So looking at this next picture, here's a quick example of that. Van der Beek running in behind, making an angle for the pass. This is, for me, an example of that Ajax game intelligence from their academy, but it's a sign that he is a good player and could add to Manchester United's attack by creating another dimension there. So to summarise the video, first of all, we've shown that defensively Van der Beek will be an improvement on United's current midfield. In terms of stopping counter-attacks, he gets dribbled past very rarely, and his tackle success is pretty good, so in that sense he complements the existing squad perfectly. Secondly, in terms of his offensive contribution, he is very good in terms of popping up with goals and assists, and he's got a very well-rounded skill set, meaning he's comfortable everywhere on the pitch in possession. Overall, clearly Van der Beek would be an improvement on United's current midfield, add greater depth to the squad, and so overall I think he will be a fantastic signing for Manchester United. Thank you very much for watching. Please do share it to try and help us grow the channel. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and see you next time.